Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About. I'm your host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, Forbes contributor, investor, and advisor. Today we're talking to Eli. Did I do it wrong or did I do it right?
Ellie, but it's okay.
See, I knew I was going to do it wrong as soon as I said it.
Mm.
Ellie Portnoy, founder and CEO of BackEngine AI. Other than slaughtering your name, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'd say 90% of people call me Eli, so I really take no offense to it.
Okay, good. Got that one out of the way. You have an incredible journey of being an entrepreneur and selling some companies for big bucks, and you've gone through the whole transition. But how did you get there? Like it's never a straight line, right? So what's your background and story?
Yeah, I mean, so I did not expect that I would be starting companies and doing it over so many times. When I was in college, actually my first job was in consulting and strategy consulting, and I thought that sounded like a very glamorous life, traveling all over the place and as a 22-year-old advising big companies, and I ended up finding out that it was anything but. My job was basically to spend all day in a PowerPoint and just move boxes around. And I found that very, very unfulfilling. And I also kept looking around, and this is 2004, and it just felt like there was something magical happening in technology, and the opportunity to build companies was incredible. And so after about a year of doing that, both because I really didn't like what I was doing and because I had this incredible gravitational pull to try and start something, I ended up leaving and starting my first company. And then once I had done that, I was just completely hooked. We live in such a unique moment in
Mhm.
history where there's so much infrastructure and technology and resources, and it's okay to fail and it's okay to take risks. And um, to me, that was just intoxicating, and I couldn't believe that we are so lucky to live in this moment in history. And all I wanted to do since is start companies.
It's you do get the bug, right?
Yeah.
I think, and I also think you're built for it or you're not built for it too.
Yeah.
If you starting companies, ain't for sissies. Just like lay it out there, really, it's unglorified completely. And I think it's a very tough road, but once you get in it, every time I have a friend or another founder that says, "Oh, it's my last thing. I'm not doing it again." Literally 6 months later, guess what? I found this whole thing. I just laugh. It's like, of course you did. Like, of course you did. You've been bit, you're sick now. You've been bit by the bug.
It's true. And I mean, I'm definitely guilty of exactly that. After my last company, I told my wife, I told all my friends, I basically
Oh
threw
yeah.
the bridge.
Oh
Never
yeah.
again.
Never doing it.
I am. Yeah.
No, never doing it, right? And it comes back. It just is one of those, I think it's one of those things. But let's get into that a little bit. You successfully built and sold, two big startups. Like, what are some of the common traits really, or decisions that help make those companies attractive acquisition targets? I know it's different for all of them, but if you can sum that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first and the most obvious is it has to be a good company, and how you define good is, different, but like you have to build a strong product or service offering. You have to have a good team. You have to be attractive. Like the growth rates have to be there, the fundamentals. But I think beyond that, I've now gotten a chance to see behind the scenes at some of these larger acquirers and try and understand
Mm.
how do they make these decisions. And oftentimes um, they're trying to see where the puck is moving and
Mhm.
balancing their ability to skate there versus having to buy someone who's already there. And that's the I often ask myself, like, how is it that so many startups win where we really have so many disadvantages? The big incumbents have bigger brand and more resources and bigger
Yeah,
teams and
yeah,
distribute.
yeah, yeah.
And yet at the same time, like we constantly win. And I think it's just because we can move faster. We're more agile. We don't have as much debt, like legacy, like technical debt and other types of debt. And so it's just easier to move and be focused and agile. And so I think that the biggest thing to be acquired is you have to find a space that requires you to move quickly because it's changing really fast. And if you can move quickly and you can get there before the big companies, you become very attractive to them. If you're just like they are, but a smaller scale, it's
Yeah,
really hard. But if you're
yeah,
doing that they're not, and they look at you and they're like, oh man, we can either try to skate their like lumbering big company or just go and acquire them. It becomes very attractive.
And you've done this, you've a couple times, like with Sense 360 and Thinknear, you've gotten to these bigger companies from an acquisition perspective. What are some of the lessons you learned in the early days of those that you're applying now to BackEngine AI?
Well, it's there are a few tactical lessons that I've learned that I'm applying, but there's a big fundamental difference in how I'm building back engine, and I think it's also somewhat informed by those experiences. So the tactical lessons are, it's really really important to have like very very tight processes around your books, around legal, around all of the things that if you don't start on day one being
Mhm.
really buttoned up, which is very easy and very cost effective, it becomes a very very big problem later on. And so, I learned that lesson the very first one with Thinknear. No, I was young. I hadn't done it before. Like we were obviously good about making sure we had the right legal documents signed and making sure we were doing things like what I thought was well, but then I was just dumping everything into one folder, and I didn't realize when you go through diligence, like you have to
Yeah,
present the data room, and that ended up being weeks of work and could have really derailed the business if it hadn't been such an early acquisition, and if we had let that build up over time. And stuff like that. That's just very tactical, like best practices. You should do it anyway. The second set of like fundamental changes are really around like a mindset. When I started Thinknear, I like the idea of being acquired was very attractive. It was very attractive from the very first moment I started that company. And part of it was personal and just like my financial situation and what that would mean for me. But also it was just it felt like the whole reason to start a company was to sell it. And what I've since learned is going back to what we were talking about before, the moment I sold it, I wanted to start the next one and then the next one. And if I sell back engine, like what's the point? I'm gonna go and start another one. And I've learned to focus on the journey more than the outcome. And I'm hoping to make this journey last longer because it really is fun to build companies. It really is interesting and rewarding. And so in terms of just perspective, I think I'm really trying to take a much longer time frame and a time horizon as I build this out.
and I think that's great as far as like the journey is concerned, because it pushes you to your brink, but it also opens up a lot of opportunities for you to learn about yourself, about others, about marketing, management, media, whatever it happens to be. Every day is a great learning experience. But a lot of founders, as you well know, don't transition to the CEO role very well, or they're great at the beginning, but then as the company grows, the skills that were needed then are not the same skills transitioning further, and it starts to crack. They start to crack, the organization starts to crack. So, how did you navigate that transition and what's kind of surprised you about it as far as responsibilities are concerned or just the role itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different role and it requires very, very different skill sets and character traits. In the early days, it really is just about powering through whatever
Yeah,
situation comes up and being a
right.
really good versatile IC. Like
Hmm.
for the first couple of years of any business, like you're doing sales, you're doing customer success,
Yeah,
you're doing
yeah,
support, you're doing product, and you really just need versatility more than anything else. You have to be able to pick stuff up quickly and just do it, even if you've never done it before. That actually ends up being a horrible trait as you start scaling, because what you really need to do is you need to start getting functional experts who can build world-class functions that are using best practices. And if you try to do that, like a founder can't, because by definition, we have not spent years and years and years at every one of these functions. And so all of a sudden you have to like give up some control. You have to become a manager. You have to know how to identify experts and things that you are not an expert in. Like
right.
it's a lot of different things that you have to get good at, and it's hard. And I can tell you, my first couple of times, the transition was very, very painful. I made the wrong hires. I managed people the wrong way. I didn't give, I either brought in people who were not experts and treated them as experts, or I brought in people who were experts but didn't treat them as experts and didn't give them the right um, space and situation. Hopefully, I'll do a better job this time. I think I'm doing a better job, but again, it's just it's very different, and there is definitely a question around what like it's clear that there are founders who have transitioned really, really well, and that when it works, it's the most powerful way to run a company. Like you think about the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos of the world, and just how well they've done that, and it becomes an absolute superpower. My personal feeling on this is that the reason it works so well is that one of the traits that works really well for early days founders and then also CEOs is being able to craft and communicate a vision. And so if you can get out of your own way on the other stuff and you can get good at actually like building real teams and managing real teams, and yet you still have that superpower around the fact that you conceived of the vision and you can continue to hone it and articulate it, that becomes a really, really big superpower because that's the one thing that professional CEOs oftentimes struggle with more. And so trying to lean into that and also make sure that I'm getting better at the sort of like core CEO skills.
Yeah, I think with that too, it's and Zuckerberg's a great case. And he brought in Sheryl Sandberg, was there for quite a long period of time as a senior leadership person who'd come over from, Google, and brought in a different level of discipline and stability to the company at a time when it actually was needed.
Yeah.
And he was smart enough to be humble enough, or his board was forceful enough, you never know, to say you need to shore this up and you need support, you need a number two. And hiring that number two is sometimes a struggle from an ego perspective. Um, it's not always a financial issue. It's a lot of times an ego issue. But once you do that and they're prepared and they're capable of taking things on, the pressure of the things that you don't do that well goes away,
Yeah. And
goes away.
at least my experience has been that the things that I'm good at give me a lot of energy, and the things that I'm not good
Mhm.
at take away a lot of energy. And so to
Yeah.
me, bring a number two is just to give the things that are painful for me.
Yeah.
And so I like the idea a lot. And it's and but it was a mind shift, and it definitely not how I thought about it initially. I remember the very first time at ThinkNear that I had this like stump speech, this vision, the way I evangelized what we were doing. And I heard someone else on the team on a call with a prospect giving it over. And my first reaction was like, almost came from a place of ego where it was like, hey, they're stealing my
Uh,
strategy. And I thought about it for a second. I'm like, oh my God, no, this is exactly what I want. Like I want
yeah.
this vision to permeate and for everyone to like spread it. And it changed everything for me about how I thought about managing and bringing people on. And it's the best way to be a leader is to empower people and then to give them just lots and lots of space.
Yeah, and space to fail,
Yeah.
space to take chances and space to fail as well. I think it's super important. Um, we talked about this just for a second of the startup life being super over glorified, like everybody wants to start up, and then they realize like how difficult it actually is. The grit. Grit is a great word, but doesn't even come close to explaining all the hours, all the time, all the missed vacations, all the. It takes an emotional toll and it's
Yeah.
pretty heavy. Some of it's self-induced for sure, where you have to do it. No, I've got to do this. I can't take a vacation. I've got to get these books. I've got to, some of it's very self-induced with a personality teams and CEOs. Other parts of it are, how do you step back and protect your mental health through this kind of rapid build and uncertainty and change, because it just today, like you said at the beginning, things just explode. We're in an amazing time in our lives where you can do a startup anywhere in the world, be successful. The tools are there. It's not bubble gum and, packing tape anymore, trying to put websites together, for example. Stuff is just there. Tools are there. So how do you stay mentally balanced when it's moving at warp speed?
That's so such a great question. And I should have mentioned this when you asked me some of the lessons that I've learned and how
Mm,
things are different because the first time for sure, and even the second time, it was very, very like I felt like the number of hours I put in directly correlated to our success. And I worked an insane number of hours at a rate of like a pace that was just not sustainable.
yeah,
It ended up costing me because one of the reasons that we had to sell is because I was completely burnt out after 2 years. Me and my co-founder were just, and we were working 18, 19 hours, 6 days a week, seven
yeah,
days a week. It was just insane. And I've come to realize that my job is not to work 14 or 16 hours a day. I'm an incredibly competitive person. I want to win so badly. But I'm better off if I can put in 10, 11 hours of really high quality work than 15 or 16 hours. And I think that's true just generally of entrepreneurs. Like there's
yeah,
so much coming at us. There's so much context switching. There's so many different things. And like we do have to do a lot of IC work and take on a lot. And like we become bottlenecks in so many ways. So there's no way, like it's not a 9 to 5 job. It can
yeah,
never be a 9 to 5
yeah,
job. But at the same time, finding the right balance of like what is the optimal amount where you are getting everything you need done, but you're also making sure you're prioritizing your mental health, the space, like the quality of your decisions. That's a very, very tough balance. And
yeah,
I don't know that I've gotten there, but I can tell you definitely one of the things that I find fascinating is in the first two times, if something like went wrong, like an employee told me that they wanted to leave, or a prospect that we thought was converting didn't convert, or
yeah,
that was just existential to me. It felt like the whole business was about to blow up, and it would lead me to act accordingly, which meant that I would put in even more hours and I would get even more stressed.
yeah,
These things are not existential. These things
yeah,
happen at every company, no matter
yeah.
how successful. And so there's also just a mental balance that I think I've been able to learn.
I think it's also realizing that not everything is in your control. That's completely out of your control. You can do great things with things that are in your control. When they're out of your control, it's not about you.
Yeah, it's not.
And it's hard to take those things not personally, but it's not about you. A person leaving, it's not about you, really. You make sure it's not about you, and if it is, try to correct. But a client not converting, it's not about you. It's just not the right place, right time, right? It doesn't mean never, it just means not right now. But it's a hard one to swallow and not take really personally.
Yeah, we get so tied up in our own business and it becomes personal and it feels like an extension of us. And then
Oh yeah.
someone, they don't like it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, and then when you sell, you have that baby left the nest. It's so great. And then you're like, oh my God, is a baby dying? Is it okay? Is it walking? You have a different sense
Yeah.
of loss of identity too. I built this thing, now it's gone, someone else has it. And my identity and everything I wrapped up in it is now, yeah, I'm successful because I sold it, but my whole being was tied into it.
Yeah.
I think that's hard to shake as well.
It's so hard. Yeah. And people don't. I was not prepared for it. At least the first time I just really didn't. I just thought it was going to be this incredible transition experience where it's like, oh, we sold it. Let's celebrate. But it is a part of you. It is like the loss of something that I don't know, defines your identity in many ways.
I have a question about when you built and sold the other companies. Are you working with the same people that you built and sold those other companies with? Do you have a drag along? Because I find that a lot of times happens.
Yeah, for sure. So the first company, um, obviously not because there wasn't one before it, but
Yeah.
the core team, basically the first four of us, all came from Thinknear at Sense360, and then we worked together throughout the journey, and then two of the four actually started a company. And so they're working together on this new company, and I'm involved. I'm an investor. I was on the board for a while. And then I started this company with three people from Sense360. And I do find that you find the people that you can really, really get in the trenches with, and it's important. not to start from scratch, but to make sure you bring them along.
Yeah, that PLU, people like us.
Right.
It goes a long way, right? And even into other, I've worked with people that on teams where we sold and it's 20 years later, 15 years later, and we still work together on things. Or like there's still like there's that mark, that
Yeah.
watermark that I know that not everybody can get to, but I know those people can, and no matter what, they're PLU forever. We always try to find things to work on
I love
together
it.
too, because it's so much fun. Because there's shorthand.
Yeah.
There's trust, implicit trust, and then there's this just shorthand. They understand my, crass sense of humor, and I understand them. So, it's been really great having you on the show. First of all, how do companies get a hold of you if they want to work with you? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, the BackEngine.ai, it's our website, easiest place to reach us. And people can feel free to reach out to me if I can help in any way. It's Leeli at BackEngine.ai.
Awesome. And let's just talk for a second before we end about Back Engine and actually what it does and why companies are going to need to talk to you.
Yeah. So the idea around back engine, it just comes from a pain that I felt the first two times I built a company, which is when we're an early, very early stage company and I was doing everything, meant that I actually knew exactly what our prospects and customers were saying. And I could bring that back to product. I could bring that back to our messaging. I could bring that back to how we thought about operations. And as we started to grow and get bigger, we started to build out teams to help support those prospects and customers, sales teams, account management teams, customer success, implementation. And that created distance between basically everyone in the organization and those customers. And so we stopped hearing what they were saying. And I found that to be incredibly painful. And I felt like that was one of the primary reasons we started to slow down. And so the basic idea around back engine is we connect to the tools that companies use to talk to customers, video calls, emails, support tickets, Slack, and we automatically use generative AI to analyze every single customer interaction and surface the patterns that leaders and managers need. What are the big problems with the product? What are the issues people are having? How do they talk about the product? What messaging is resonating with them? Where are there potential risks or opportunities? Why are we losing deals? Things of that nature that really help the organization just move faster and more concretely towards the actual customer and what they need. And then we also help the frontline teams use that data to be able to build out better work products. You're building a PRD, a product requirements
Hmm.
like it automatically ingests all of the times customers have asked and talked and brought up the issue. You're building out a quarterly business review for a customer. It brings in all the context automatically. So it's basically like a centralized repository of everything customers said to help power all functions in the business.
That's really fascinating and so needed
Thank you.
because the really you can get death by a thousand cuts, right? If you're not listening to customers, but gathering all that information together and bringing it into kind of a succinct, cohesive, like you said, report or analysis. That's amazing. I wish you tons of luck with it. I probably have 20 clients that could use it. So, let's keep in touch.
Yeah, please send them our way.
Thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cynthia. It was so nice chatting with you. I appreciate you having me.